In this video, we're going to talk about the debt ceiling. When the U.S. government does not have enough cash on hand to meet its spending commitments, it mainly issues debt to make up the difference. The current debt the U.S. government owes is a whopping $31.4 trillion. From 2013 through the end of 2022, the U.S. debt grew by nearly 86% according to Treasury data. The debt to gross domestic product (GDP) ratio, an important metric for a country's ability to pay its own debt, also grew from 100% in 2013 to 124% in 2022. The U.S. government is set to run out of money in July instead of August because less tax revenue was collected. It could happen as early as June, in fact. The House right now is controlled by Republicans and the Senate is controlled by Democrats. U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Kevin McCarthy outlined spending cuts his fellow Republicans would demand in exchange for voting to raise the debt limit. Basically, Republicans want spending cuts and Democrats want to see the debt ceiling raised with everything as is. Most likely, disaster is going to be avoided with an 11th hour resolution with both sides making concessions. This is how it's always done. When it comes to raising the roof on U.S. debt, there appears to be a rinse and repeat pattern in play. Since 1960, Congress has produced 78 separate measures to raise, extend, or amend the debt limit. There's an average of one piece of debt ceiling legislation per year over the last 6 decades. Congress has never lowered the debt limit. Usually debates about the debt ceiling are often mundane and investors don't usually see an immediate effect from the process. There are some notable exceptions, however. Take, for example, investors' cliffhanger experience in 2011 when congressional discussions about budget reconciliation process stalled within the House and Senate chambers. The ensuing gridlock soured investor sentiment and the S&P 500 plummeted 17.4% from May 2nd to October 4th, 2011. Further, Americans' credit rating was downgraded by Standard & Poor's from AAA to AA+ for the first time since 1917 on August 6th of that year. If the debt ceiling is not raised, the federal government will not be able to meet its obligations, including Social Security, Medicare, military salaries, and interest on debt. Again, this has never happened in American history, and I see little chance that it will get out of hand this time as well. Here are my thoughts. Every time this happens, the debt ceiling becomes a bargaining chip. It becomes a game of chicken, but it does get resolved. The bigger issue on hand is that the U.S. is increasing its debt load at an alarming pace. As mentioned, the debt has grown by 86% since 2013. That's just not sustainable. A country's currency is purely based on trust. Trust is a hard thing to quantify and understand in financial markets. Whether it's months, years, or decades, this borrowing will come back to haunt us. No country in history has ever been able to borrow endlessly without eventually having a currency crisis. The only way to water down the debt load is for the currency to get devalued or for there to be robust growth to offset the debt. Since the U.S. is a mature nation, getting growth of 3% is considered great, and getting much higher than that for a sustained duration is just not really realistic. Compounding all of this is the fact that we're having the biggest working generation of all time, the boomers, set to retire. As for devaluing the currency, almost every super civilization has had that happen to their currency. It's already happened quite a bit since the pandemic due to inflation. Consider this. Since 1972, the real value of the dollar has decreased by over 86%. That means something that was $1 in 1972 is over $7 today. Consider something else. Since Warren Buffett was born back in 1930, the dollar has lost over 96% of its value. That's just astonishing. Bottom line is, $1 million ain't what it used to be, and unfortunately soon we'll be saying that about $1 billion. If you enjoyed my content, please subscribe and we'll have more content in the days and weeks to come. Thanks again.